Hello again, Michael Hedges, CEO of ScriptLink, here to discuss other aspects of the proposal process. So let's go ahead and look at an overall RFP. Let's see that I will show, or rather share. Hmm, Let's see here. Okay. So to begin with, obviously, we're going to read the entire RFP from start to finish. This particular one is WEO Services or Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, uh, an RFP or a proposal that would refer to workforce services, workforce solutions. So that will be for particular populations such as adult populations, dislocated worker populations, and youth populations. To be honest, there are a number of similarities between adult and dislocated worker. Adult is generally anyone over 18 that is not working at the time, um, due to a number of things will come to unemployment, possibly homelessness, could be a substance issue, could be a number of different challenges that they're facing. And so therefore we're looking to assist them as best as possible to get them to the point of training, being in some forms of programs that will assist them to overall have that independence as far as being part of the workforce. Dislocated worker would be anyone that is an adult but has been unemployed for over 27 weeks. So there's some differences as far as programs that specifically look for dislocated workers, and usually that could be the result of layoffs or um, any kind of situation where a person has been released from a position that may be due even to technological changes, AI, things to that effect. Youth, you're going to have two categories, and this also can relate to Job Corps to some extent. But your youth, you're going to have in school youth and you have out of school youth. In school youth, usually you're looking anywhere between, say, 14 to obviously maybe 18, but you may have students who are outside of that age group. So it could be 14 to 21 if it's specified in the particular RFP that you're reviewing. Out of school youth are usually going to be 18 to 24. And there is sort of a overlap between out of school youth and adult and dislocated worker, depending on how the particular individual is categorized. Again, there are certain elements that would be different. For instance, with youth, you would have what they refer to as the WEO of 14 elements. Those are specific elements that are specified by the federal government that have to be addressed in order for a youth program to fulfill specific needs. Again, most of it's going to be centered around education, personal development, a lot of more social support and emotional support that youth may need outside of, say, what adults may receive, which is going to be focused more on employment. It is expected they will be more independent. If there is some sort of support for adults that can kind of align with youth, it would be things such as if they're part of a underreached or underserved groups such as LGBT, um, certain people of color, other groups that have been disenfranchised for a number of years. And another thing you want to make sure is when writing those, or in the case of having those services provided for you, you address all particular populations with the language of the funder. In other words, the entity that creates the RFP, you want to speak that language. So if they say underserved, underrepresented, anything to that effect, focus on responding to those terms. Always use the language of the funder, because that makes you kind of on the same level, same, playing field. It's understood that you understand their value in using that particular language. So once again, we've already looked at bidding. And so with a yes bid, we're going to go through the RFP. But one of the specific areas to focus on would be the scope of work. So for instance, for this particular funder, we are addressing their element of, let's see, comprehensive programs designed to serve adult and dislocated worker participants eligible under WIOA and serving businesses as it relates to employment and training needs and connecting opportunities to participants. So that's going to be your particular service that's going to be provided. So if I'm writing or member of ScriptLink is writing, we're focused on what is specific service, population, and then of course location. In this case, we see that we're referring to these particular areas as far as Bradford, Sullivan, Susquehanna, Tioga, and Wyoming County residents. So scope of work is going to, again, define that. So let's see. And then once you have that, you can kind of go to the overall requirements. And this is something that'll be general for any location, no matter what city, what state. If it's, say, a WIOA program, again, AEC, any particular specific service or field, the language is pretty much going to be the same throughout any RFP that you receive from any funder. In this particular one, we're referring to Pennsylvania. So we'll go to the general requirements. I believe that was on page 14. So when we look at general requirements, what needs to be done is that each requirement usually needs to be translated into an overall question or statement. The requirement is going to provide the basis of how to answer. So in this case, legal requirements. We're looking at compliance with local, state, and federal regulations, including the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, WIOA, Americans with Disability Act, ADA, always important, and equal opportunity laws, always important. So each one of these bullets that we see under legal requirements, each represents an actual statement that we have to answer or address. So how are we compliant? Well, and some might be as simple as, yes, we are WIOA, ADA, and EEO compliant. Then we look at adherence to all applicable licensing. We may, in permitting and reporting requirements for workforce development services, we may provide a short statement to address what specific licensing the funder may be referring to, permitting and reporting. Because a lot of times you'll have federal requirements, but again, local is everything. So we're going to go kind of almost a funnel. Federal general, state, we're kind of bringing it in, and then local will be, say, those specific areas, that specific entity or funder. It could be a county entity, it could be a city entity, it could be a regional entity as well. So we want to make sure that we don't just give a general statement all the time. We definitely want to have details. We don't want to have kind of that cookie cutter or carbon copy way to address things. But that takes some investigation, because some funders don't want a lot of detail for general approaches. They just want the offer to state that, yes, we comply, yes, we have this capability. Of course, HIPAA statements that would address, privacy factors and protection of privacy of any of the participants that we support. And again, this is through the adult dislocated worker program, this particular area in Pennsylvania. When we address staffing and organizational requirements, we do want to provide a staffing model. So that's kind of the overall hierarchy, what positions are going to be filled. We may not really address exactly who are in those positions, But again, that's sort of further down the line. But we want to show the chain of command. We want to show how roles interact, what areas of service will they perform throughout the contract. Once we get into, say, supervision and management of staff and ensure accountability, then we can either address actual people that are on staff now. For instance, if we're an incumbent, we already have a contract, we're doing a rebid. So, have we had changes in staff? Has staff had any new experiences or new certification or licensing or anything to that effect? Enhance the overall, I guess you say, the competitiveness that we would have against anyone else that's going to apply. So any of our competitors. So uh, if we are new or we are trying to quote unquote dethrone the incumbent and become the incumbent, we have to, for use of APMP language or Shipley language, we want to ghost them. We want to show where we shine and they're basically dull. So we still want to address staff and their experiences, or if we have maybe do not have the staff in place, but we do have the structure, we'll address how staff will perform and how that will again outshine the competition. We also want to address security such as pre-employment screening. So we're looking at background checks, drug tests, anything that is going to provide that overall area of security and transparency that the funder will demand in order for us to be eligible and to show them that we are being honest, open, and then of course we're going to provide the best service. We also want to look at staff training. A lot of times, even with um, WIOA performance, whether we're working by ourselves or working with, say, partners, we have to show that there will be a streamlined form of training provided across the board. If we have, say, a one-stop arrangement where you would have uh, the the project director in a position of operating a one-stop center or a one-stop operator, there will be a number of partnering groups that will also have staff. So we want to make sure across the board, the staff training in this case will encompass orientation, ongoing professional development, and updates on workforce development policies and best practices. Obviously, best practices are developed usually through evidence-based performance or research. So it has sort of a backing. It's not very experimental. It's based on what have we done, or if we have been experimental, what has generated the best results. Those become our best practices. Also, as I stated earlier, we want to look at credentials, licensure, staff that is required by the state, but we also want to look at anything that we can provide that is an extra or something that would be considered of value beyond just the required licensure or credentials. We also want to look at overall data and technology requirements because many times it could be, in this case, computer hardware and software that's necessary. We have to be in compliance, either at that level or above. If we don't have the capacity to support a contract as far as our technology and IT capabilities, then that's going to be a problem. So it may anytime we do see maybe an issue or challenge, then that's always the consideration of will we have subcons or will we be partnered with different groups that can kind of support that aspect of the contract and further our competitiveness to win. We're going to look at, again, securing that software and hardware, securing our email capabilities and internet capabilities. We will also look at how do we go about implementing um, evaluations by the funder, as well as partners we may work with and the participants we serve. So we have to look at client satisfaction, how are we collecting that information? Usually it will be through surveys. And we're also going to look at the program evaluation as far as the outcomes. How do we measure those outcomes? How do we identify areas of improvement? And how do we inform, present, promote future service strategies and developments? Because we want to always continue to grow and move forward when providing services for our particular participants. And all this, again, I'm addressing it as if Scriptlink is not performing that, but the point is that that is what needs to be in each proposal as far as to represent clients, or in this case, offers who are going to funders and presenting their best. We also want to look again at how records are kept for regarding data collection. Reporting is very essential because everything is about compliance. If you're not being compliant, then you're basically failing the contract. So we want to make sure we understand funder guidelines, requirements, requests, or anything that will make them know and recognize, again, our professionalism and ability to perform accordingly. When we look at financial and compliance requirements, we're going to look at, of course, insurance, financial controls, financial status reports, audited statements, and all reporting that is required. So again, that's where we do have sort of an overlapping of our legal representation, securities that we have involved, companies that handle our overall security, so we're compliant. um, how do we fall legally in areas to make sure that we are covered and the people we serve are covered. So again, transparency is everything. If there are challenges or issues, it's often best to state them in a fashion where if there are challenges, let's say um, in our financial background that may raise eyebrows, we'd rather address them than conceal them. That in itself, that's not good at all. So honesty is the best policy in this case, and compliance is the best policy. Um, so budget requirements is usually when we're kind of considering um, cost efficiency, how we'll go about spending the actual funds that are received by the funder. In other words, it can't be just a blanketed statement. It should be detailed as far as how monies will be distributed, how they will be used, what kind of fees may be exchanged. And usually with an adult, with any kind of WIOA program, we're usually not charging any fees from the actual participants. However, if there are third parties involved, or in some cases there may be some fees involved, will we provide the fees to be spent in the form of a stipend for a client or for a participant to participate in a program? Or will it be a situation where um, if a program is dealing with any kind of work experience, and the fees are given to participants, how does that work? So that's another thing to kind of address as far as budget requirements. In this case, in this particular RFP, we're talking about adherence to cost standards, identification of program funding sources, which again is, where is your money come from? Are you getting outside money, or are you strictly dealing with the money provided by the funder? Proration of costs is necessary to allocate expenses fairly among multiple funding sources or partners. So again, that's the area of transparency. Where's the money going? Who is it going to? And how's it being distributed and spent? Compliance with third-party reimbursement policies, incorporation of flat fees, fee for service revenues, and other funding mechanisms. Submission of sub-consultant cost schedules, if applicable, detailing the expenses associated with any subcontract services or partnerships. So again, those examples are addressing how's the money going to move, who is it going to, uh, what areas of compliance do we need to meet, and what areas of transparency do we need to meet in order to be best, you know, to best represent ourselves as honest, supportive, and again, a true partner with the funder. Um, so here we're talking about the actual funder, the Northern Tier Workforce Development Board, and their role and how they'll address certain things as far as support. So we're kind of just getting into some of the other elements of how the funder will interact with us, what's to expect, their expectations, and even though this may not be directly written in the proposal response. In other words, when we see the budget requirements here, and of course we start on page 14 here with general requirements. These that we see here, legal requirements, staffing organizational requirements, data and technology requirements, financial and compliance requirements, and budget requirements are essentially the sections that we'll have in the response. And that'll include some attachments, um, letters of support from past performance that we've provided, things to that effect. We also do need to address our past performance. How have we, carried out contracts in similar fashion with similar funders or the same funder? Those will be the essential sections of the proposal that we'll provide. However, we do have to consider what the role of the funder is, what their value points are. What is something that attracts them most? What are things that are essential to them that will make them feel comfortable with saying, hey, your company is the company we want to award this contract to, and we look forward to sharing a very, lucrative, fulfilling relationship and support the participants of our given municipality. Again, it could be city, could be a region, could be a county, could be the entire state, or even a region of the country. So um, that would probably be the best place to stop for here. But well, we can also look at some of the performance metrics, and those are things that you usually can kind of look over. For instance, with adult dislocated worker or any, and also youth, you're going to look at your second and fourth quarters to be basically benchmarks where you want performance to be at a level, depending on, sometimes they're set by the funder, but you always want to shoot for 100. So even if it's 95, okay. But if we know that our performance is under a certain amount, then we have to consider how best to explain it. What external situations may have caused us to not perform at the level we need to. As we see here too, we're talking about measurable skills gains that could be addressed not only through the educational or training that is provided in the program, but also the outcomes, which is to get a number of members to complete the program. And when we say this, we mean to complete the education and training, but also job placement. We want job placement for at least a year, which would be within the time that we operate the contract, which also leads into the best way to say, hey, our past performance reflects on how we'll continue to perform because we want to extend that contract, continue to be the incumbent at that case, or to win the incumbency and move forward. So thank you again. I'll provide another video specific to our proposal services that we provide here at ScriptLink.